Welcome back, defenders. According to the Telegraph, Russia is racing to seize as much Ukrainian territory as possible ahead of peace talks with Trump. Small Russian reconnaissance groups have infiltrated Ukrainian defenses in eastern Donetsk, forcing Kyiv to deploy special forces to the area. This is the concerning development from the front lines from the last week. And yes, this is concerning. Somehow the Russians were able to penetrate about 16 kilometers deep within 2 days. They managed to get into newly constructed fortifications. Once the Russians are in the trenches, they can basically use the trenches for themselves. But in a video a couple days ago, I said, I'm not too concerned. I don't think big picture this is going to change the outcome of this war. And I had other pro-Ukrainian YouTubers calling me out, saying I wasn't taking the situation serious. So let's talk about it. This advance cut through a defensive line on the map, which in practice can now mean very little, because this is not a war of trenches held by infantry, but of well-masked positions for vehicles and small groups of infantry with large gaps in between. This defense line, there's only about 8 guys in charge of covering about 1 kilometer of distance. This isn't like World War I, where there are thousands of men in the trenches all stacked together. It's too deadly. Between artillery and FPV drones or even glide bomb attacks, you just can't concentrate your troops. You have to spread them out to reduce your casualties. So there aren't really clear defense lines. There are dugouts, there are burrows, there are men sitting underground with machine nests, trying to hide from artillery and FPV drones and glide bomb attacks. So this is how the Russians were able to basically sneak through gaps undetected, concentrating deep within this trench line or behind the front lines. So Ukraine is taking it serious. Azov Corps rushes to block Russian advance, threatening key cities in Donetsk. And the Azov Brigade is one of the best, and they're kicking ass. Following Russia's surprise raid 15 kilometers past frontline fortifications in Donetsk, Ukrainian rapid response led by Azov eliminated 151 Russian troops, wounded over 70, and captured 8 within 2 days. There are videos. These are the Russian soldiers who chose to surrender rather than die with their comrades. And I can't help but looking at the face of this child. I have no clue how old this Russian man is, but he doesn't look particularly old. This is who Russia is sending on suicide missions, reconnaissance missions, infiltration, sabotage groups. They're sending these men in, and it's a one-way ticket every single time. So here is Andrew Perpetua. He's one of the best as far as tracking casualties and losses on the battlefield. And I want to read his entire post to just kind of calm everyone down. The reporting on what is going on around Pokrovsk has been very misleading, and a lot of people are drawing the wrong conclusions. First, let's start by describing what this absolutely is not. It is not a breakthrough. It just isn't. The people saying it is are being hysterical. In reality, Russia has shifted to primarily using the following tactic. You take 2 men, dressed in cloaks to hide their thermal signature. They are led by drone through a specified path, the drone ensuring their security and camouflage. These infantry move up into positions and then lay in wait, being resupplied by drones. They ambush opportunistically and kill anyone, mostly civilians, who threaten to give away their position. Russia then moves up another pair, and another pair, and another pair, to accumulate forces in exacting specified positions. The entire operation is directed from above. The people involved have no initiative. In some cases, once a route has enough of these small rifle teams, they push forward a larger group of light infantry. So the solution to this problem includes things like bolstering communications, forming more quick reaction teams, putting more reconnaissance assets in the area, cutting off supply routes, and going into dugouts and other positions to destroy the rifle teams where they're hiding. The people claiming Russia has advanced are basically bullshitting you. There isn't an advance. The reality is that there isn't a coherent front line. This analysis is echoed by Sean Piner. He's a former British soldier and a Ukrainian Marine. And he says, those who have been doom posting are not understanding of the front lines and especially do not understand the PR nature recently adopted by the Russians, filming fast-moving small groups, placing flags, and then being killed. That said, Pokrovsk is an intense area under immense pressure and violent fighting. Our defenders are amazing, considering so-called experts said last November it would fall by Christmas. They neglected to mention what year, which Christmas. This is where we are. This is not significant progress being made by the Russians over 3.5 years. This is embarrassing. This is where they started. More or less, this is where they are now. 3.5 years, hundreds of thousands killed, 35 kilometers. So when Avdiivka fell, almost 1.5 years ago, everyone was saying Pokrovsk was next. But Pokrovsk has been holding. Pokrovsk more or less has been surrounded for 8 months. And the Russians just bleed every single day. This is attritional warfare, and Ukraine is winning. I understand everyone wants a scoreboard and they want to use the map as the scoreboard, but it's about resources. It's about will and determination of the fighting soldiers. Ukraine for 3.5 years has been trading land for time. And as far as militaries in the history of warfare, they're the best. What military in any battle throughout history has held on to territory for 3.5 years on the scale of 30, 40, or 50 kilometers? Meanwhile, the enemy bleeds money, bleeds resources, bleeds soldiers. I hate staring at this map, guys, but this is not significant. It's just pockets of soldiers in dugouts fighting each other everywhere. And Ukraine has the advantage because they're defending. If Pokrovsk falls, the war does not end. If Konstantinivka falls, the war doesn't end. If Kramatorsk falls, the war doesn't end. If Sloviansk falls, the war doesn't end. Putin doesn't want to stop until he has all of Ukraine. So until the Russians take Zaporizhia, until the Russians take Kharkiv, until the Russians take Dnipro, we're just trading land for time, and we're getting a very good value. So this is what we're waiting for. Increased aid from the Allies or a diplomatic breakthrough to get the Russians to stop. Alaska opposes tyranny, pro-Ukraine rally planned ahead of Trump-Putin summit in the United States. So the Trump-Putin summit is going to take place on a U.S. military base to stop protesters from being seen by Vladimir Putin. And this is disappointing. I can show you where this military base is located. We can zoom into Anchorage, Alaska. This is the largest city in Alaska, and it's not very big. So here is the Anchorage airport, but Putin is going to fly into right here. This is Elmendorf Air Force Base. Putin's going to land on this landing strip, and I don't know if the conference is going to take place on the Air Force Base or if Putin's going to have a motorcade and then drive to the joint base. This is an Army post and an Air Force base. But honestly, guys, as an Air Force officer, as a United States veteran, this is pretty disgusting. Elmendorf Air Force Base for decades has been responding to and countering Russian threats, Soviet threats. It's American planes for decades who have been scrambling to respond to Russian threats, Russian provocations. And Donald Trump is welcoming a war criminal to U.S. soil, rolling out the red carpets and hosting the man like he hasn't killed millions of people. This is really upsetting and offensive to anyone who cares about human rights and democracy. Here's the cover of the New York Post. This is Trump's favorite newspaper. This is a dictator. Vladimir Putin over the last 26 years has killed millions of people. He killed hundreds of thousands of Chechens, hundreds of thousands of Syrians, tens of thousands at least in sub-Saharan Africa, sponsoring all these coups. He's killed Georgians, Moldovans, and of course, now hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and hundreds of thousands of his own soldiers, meat assaulting to no gains in the Donbass region. He's a mass murderer and a really shitty person, and this is who Donald Trump wants to be friends with, who he's going to welcome to U.S. soil and offer the protection of the United States military so that he can safely visit. White House confirms Trump-Putin meeting in Anchorage without Zelensky. Obviously, Putin is not going to debase himself by meeting with a usurper of rightful Russian colonial territory. And Trump doesn't care about Zelensky either. Unless you've got 5,000 nuclear warheads, Trump doesn't take you serious. He doesn't think you're strong. Zelensky says Ukraine will not cede land as a springboard for the next war. The Ukrainian president also warned that any productive talks without Ukraine at the table will not be accepted by Trump and Putin, whatever they decide to agree. Let me read for you this clip of President Zelensky speaking at a conference. This is from yesterday. As for negotiations in any case, it's important at the leadership level, but it is impossible to talk about Ukraine without Ukraine, and no one will accept that. Therefore, the conversation between the President of the United States, whom we support, and Putin could certainly be important for their bilateral track, but they cannot decide anything about Ukraine without us. And I truly believe and hope that the President of the United States understands and realizes this. We will definitely have a trilateral meeting at the leadership level. I don't know the date yet. If we want to end the war, then it will be so. And there will be certain issues discussed there. Stand by the truth, by our truth, and do everything possible to end this war. So here's the good news. Trump-Putin Alaska summit to be a listening exercise only. The White House has now confirmed this. So going back to Sunday and Monday, Trump was talking about a land swap deal. Ukraine and the Europeans said, no, you can't decide territory exchanges without Ukraine there. And I think the Russians said no, because this was a colossal miscommunication with Witkoff. Witkoff went to Moscow at the 25th hour? Because Trump was going to put sanctions and tariffs on Russia finally, but because Witkoff had a diplomatic breakthrough, the land swap deal, we got this face-to-face meeting, except the Russians never offered that. And the Russians confirmed this on Kremlin State TV. Here's the latest clip from Russia Media Monitor. Russian State TV discusses the upcoming Alaska summit. The entire thing is 10 minutes. I'll link it down below, but they made it clear that Russia's not swapping anything. Russia is not giving back anything to Ukraine. Russian Foreign Ministry's deputy spokesman Fadiv today has commented about many speculations about the so-called exchange of territories. I quote, Russia's territorial structure is enshrined in the constitution of our country. Therefore, Moscow will certainly not withdraw its troops from the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, as some Western media has claimed. According to the Russian constitution, we don't consider these territories as part of Ukraine. What will happen to the territories if some kind of an agreement is reached? What will Ukraine get to keep? What will Russia get? And so on. I am completely convinced that everywhere the Russian soldier set his foot will unquestionably be kept by Russia. I'm sure that this is the red line. Although we agreed not to draw red lines, this is our red line. So the Russians agreed not to draw red lines. but this is their red line. Any territory that they've ever taken by force, they're going to keep forever. They're never going to be willing to give anything back to Ukraine, ever. There's no deal. There's no land swapping. So why are the Russians going to this meeting at all? If this was a misunderstanding with Witkoff, and there is no deal, why is Putin going? The Kremlin is using the Alaska summit to portray Russia as a world power equal to the United States, and to posture Putin as an equal to President Donald Trump. This is what the Russians want, and Donald Trump is just giving it away to them, giving them this equal status, this equal level of prestige. Zelensky says U.S. summit in Alaska, a personal victory for Putin. Here are thoughts from Garry Kasparov. Trump wants to restore full relations with Russia and Putin in this summit, to exonerate and reward the mass murderer and create a new access for personal glory and profit. Trump has never cared about Ukraine, or only because Putin does, and it will be a side story. So concerning Ukraine, there's nothing to talk about. The Russians are not negotiating, so Putin and Trump are going to get in a room and they're going to talk about other stuff they want to do together in the future. The Trump administration is reportedly planning to cooperate with Russia in exploiting rare earth minerals in the occupied regions of Ukraine. It is also said to be planning to offer Russia the chance to exploit Alaska's mineral resources and ease aviation sanctions. So the natural resources that the Russians have taken by force, destroyed cities, killed hundreds of thousands of people, Trump wants to help the Russians do business and extract these resources, Ukraine's resources, out of the ground. And this is being reported by the Daily Telegraph. This is kind of even too insane for me to believe, but Trump wants to present a joint venture with the Russians to extract Alaska's mineral resources. So Trump can offer this, but the Russians aren't going to agree. I mean, Putin might say nice things to Trump, but Trump cannot guarantee that he and MAGA will stay in office and stay in power forever. Dictators can, but Trump hasn't 100% got there yet. So the Russians know that if MAGA and Trump fall out of power in 2028, the next president can then just abandon all these projects, cut the Russians off. For there to be a joint venture of exploiting the natural resources of Alaska with the Russians would have to put capital and infrastructure up front that they would lose in 2028 if a Democrat won the White House. So the Russians are never going to go for this. Trump can offer them, but Trump is 80 years old, and he's not going to be alive much longer. And Putin and the Russians, they know this. So there are no long-term financial joint ventures and deals that Putin would agree to, because he doesn't think Trump is going to be in office for the next 10 or 20 years for those projects to reach profitability. What is Putin going to talk to Trump about? Putin to present Trump with historical materials framing Ukraine as an artificial state. So when these two idiots meet each other, Trump is going to have maps of Ukraine and Alaska saying we can make money together, we can do business. And Putin is going to have maps of historical Kievan Rus from 1,000 years ago and explain why Ukraine is a fake identity. And none of these people are actually real. The Ukrainian history, culture, and language is all fake. Therefore, Putin should be allowed to kill as many people as he wants. This meeting's not going to go well. These two are not on the same page. They do not want the same things. And Trump just can't take a hint that Putin just isn't into him. So Zelensky met with EU leaders, and this is what their demands are, or what their criteria is for ending this war. There will be no land talks until there is a ceasefire. Russia has to agree to a ceasefire on the ground before we start discussing who gets to have what, who gets to keep what, or maybe a swap. There will be no sanctions relief for Russia. Russia must pay war reparations of between $500 billion and $1 trillion for all the stuff they've destroyed. Ukraine has the right to self-determination. They need security guarantees to prevent the next war, so Ukraine must be allowed to join NATO and the European Union, and Russia must return all prisoners of war, all civilians they've abducted, and all of their stolen children. For the war to end, Russia has to do all those things, and then we can start talking about normalizing relations or lifting some sanctions or even returning some frozen assets. I don't know. But the Russians have to agree to a ceasefire and stop killing people first. So here is Zelensky landing in Berlin, meeting with the German Chancellor. I am grateful for Chancellor Merz for hosting today's special format, a conversation between Europe and the United States. So this is the 6th meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. Together with our partners, we supported the efforts of U.S. President Trump to end the war, stop the killings, and achieve a just and lasting peace. I am grateful to the partners for our shared position. The path to peace cannot be determined without Ukraine, and negotiations can only yield results if they take place under a ceasefire. So the German Chancellor and Zelensky are together. Zelensky then went to London today, but this was basically a video conference of all the G7 and European leaders phoning in. And in the upper left-hand corner, this is J.D. Vance. So we've got everyone who cares about Ukraine on this conference call, and then J.D. Vance. So Zelensky on Twitter is trolling the vice president again. 3 or 4 months ago, when Zelensky was kicked out of the White House, J.D. Vance said, "Why don't you ever say thank you?" If you check the tape, Zelensky thanked Trump and the United States twice before J.D. Vance criticized him. So on Twitter, Zelensky is now, quote, thanking all of these leaders for their statements in support of Ukraine. Here's Mark Rutte, Keir Starmer. Thank you for your support. 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 Here's Emmanuel Macron. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support. He did this 30 times because all of these democratic leaders are expressing their support and solidarity for Ukraine prior to this Alaskan summit. But who didn't? The guy on the video call, J.D. Vance. No statements in support of Ukraine. Instead, he's attacking European leaders. A person who has gotten nearly every major issue wrong over the last 30 years is mad at the President of the United States for engaging in diplomacy. Diplomacy that's not going to go anywhere. Russia is not going to stop these wars. I want to share this tweet from Jessica Berlin. Dear Europe, if you think getting the US president to verbally agree not to offer Ukrainian territory to Russia counts as a win, then you're losing. I do agree with this analysis. For Trump and Putin to meet, say whatever they want, do whatever they want, ignore international law, yeah, Europe is losing. Europe needs to wake up. They need to achieve their full potential and force the Russians to stop this war. That can only be done with overwhelming military force being supplied to the Ukrainians on the battlefield. They're doing more than they were a year ago, but they haven't reached their full potential yet. I want to see it. Trump suggests severe consequences for Russia if the peace talks fail. I'll play the clip. You can listen and decide for yourself if you want to believe this man.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences, yes.
It's August 14th. It's been 8 months, and Donald Trump has done nothing to force Russia to stop this war. For 8 months, the Russians have been playing this game, stalling for time, convincing Trump that they can be reasoned with, they can be negotiated with, when they're not going to negotiate. I actually think we're closer to Putin walking away from Trump and telling Trump to get lost than we are for Trump to ever actually do something negative towards Russia. I want to remind everyone that Trump has placed 10% tariffs on Ukraine, and the tariff rate on Russia is still 0%. When asked why, Trump says we're currently trying to get peace with Russia. We're negotiating with Russia. That's why it's 0%. But then why is it 10% on Ukraine? I'm sorry, guys. I know you hate this. I hate this. This man is an idiot. And he's kind of evil. And he's not going to help us. Ukraine and Europe, you have to win this on your own. Any additional support or help the United States provides, it's just bonus. But the United States is not going to save you. For the next 3.5 years, the United States is worthless. So Ukraine is applying their own sanctions. Ukraine strikes Druzhba, Russia's largest oil pumping station near the border, sparking a massive fire. This is an oil pipeline going through Bryansk and Belarus. It still is pumping to buyers in Europe, and Ukraine successfully took the pipeline offline. I'm sure it will be repaired, but slowing them down, stopping operations even for a day costs Russia money. And this has the Hungarians very upset. This is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Hungary, and this is what he says. Overnight, Ukraine launched a drone strike on a key distribution station of the Druzhba oil pipeline in Russia's Bryansk region. Hungary is Ukraine's #1 electricity supplier. Without us, the country's energy security would be highly unstable. Given this, the Ukrainian attack on the pipeline, which supplies Hungary with oil and is vital to our security, is outrageous. We firmly call on Ukraine to stop endangering Hungary's energy supply and to stop attacks on energy supply routes leading to Hungary in a war we Hungarians have nothing to do with. Screw you, Hungary. I couldn't care less if you are unable to buy Russian oil because a pipeline gets destroyed. The Russians have been blowing up children's hospitals in Ukraine, and you guys don't seem to care. So no, I don't care if you can't get your oil from Russia anymore. Ukrainian drone strike sets fire to Russia's Volgograd oil refinery. This is another oil refinery. This is a massive fire. It's huge. And this is where this is located on the map. The firm's data shows that the fire is pretty widespread and massive across this complex. And this is Ukraine just carrying out their strategy. Something switched or changed on August 1st. I don't know what this is. But these are all the refineries that Ukraine has struck in the last 2 weeks. You've got Ryazan on August 2nd, Afipsky on August 7th, Slaviansk on August 7th, Saratov on August 10th, Novokubievsky on August 2nd, and now Volgograd on August 14th. This is devastating for Russia's energy industry. Russia to hold emergency talks with oil firms as fuel prices continue to surge. The move comes as gasoline prices in Russia have jumped nearly 50% since the start of the year. Russian gas prices are at an all-time high. You can see that it's seasonal and it usually spikes in the summertime. But this is a new record high. Russia is supposed to be basically the world's gas station. Domestically, the price should be pretty cheap for local consumers, but Ukraine has taken so much refining capacity offline, Russia is importing gasoline from Belarus and Kazakhstan because all of their oil refineries are now on fire. As sanctions bite, Russia's war chest nears empty by Christmas. The Russian economy is not collapsing, but it is stagnant and suffering high inflation, and this economic decline could be at a tipping point because Russia may run out of liquid reserves, prompting the Kremlin to cut public expenditures. Putin doesn't care. He doesn't care what happens to his own economy. He will stop paying his soldiers and keep forcing them into battle to go fight and die for him. There's a lot where Russia could still cut back on to just keep dragging it out. But if you stop paying your soldiers, or the salary your soldiers get can't even, pay the bills at home for your wife and kids, that's when you get a mutiny. Past due mortgage and auto loan debt in Russia nearly doubles amid economic strain. Delinquent housing loans have reached 95 billion rubles in the second quarter, a 97% increase from the same period last year, while overdue auto loans climbed 85% to 32 billion rubles. This is according to United Credit Bureau report. People are just not paying their bills anymore in Russia. The cascade of defaults is going to cripple Russia's commercial banks. There's already the reports that they're going to formally ask the Kremlin and the central bank for a bailout later this month or in September. So we'll get more information how bad Russia's economy is doing by next month. 2 Russian defense plants hit in under 24 hours. Drones strike Orenburg helium site and Stavropol sapphire factory. Second deep strike in days hits Russia's Shahid-type drone storage site in Russia. There's videos of just drones slamming into factories. It's hard, to permanently take these factories offline. You don't know exactly what in the factory you're hitting or if you can cripple its operations, but this is slowing the Russians down, and it's costing them money. The Russians have lost another jet. This is a Su-30. The Ukrainian Navy intercepted the radio communications about the loss of contact with the aircraft. So this Russian plane was flying a mission out in the Black Sea, I think potentially targeting those oil rigs or Snake Island, and either there was a piloting error, a mechanical malfunction, or Ukraine shot it down. There's no reports of what happened to the pilots, but Russia lost another plane. Air defenses surround Putin residence where rumored girlfriend and sons live. Putin's Valdai residence turns into World War II Nazi-style Flakturme fortress with 12 Panzer S-1 air defense towers. Wow. So we know these air defense towers are there because they're very visible. It's a giant tower with a Panzer S-1 air defense system on top. And this is Putin's residence in the city of Valdai, and there are 12 of them, protecting his gymnast girlfriend and his bastard children. There are rumors that Putin has fathered sons with this, I think she's a famous former gymnast. And yeah, I think Putin might actually be trying to set up a line of succession for a male heir if he can live another 10, 15 years. And these boys, there's no pictures or videos of them. Putin's trying to keep them secret. But yeah, they could, it could turn into a Kim Jong-un, Kim dynasty scenario in Russia if Putin can hold on to power and stay alive for another 15 or 20 years. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Czech shell initiative changes Russian artillery advantage from 10-1 to 2-1. This is according to the Czech foreign minister. And it has made a difference. Thank you so much, the fantastic Czechs. You guys are great. EU to send 1.6 billion euros from frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Fantastic work, everyone. We should be taking more of Russia's money and using it to defeat Russia. That would be nice. Latvia to contribute 2.3 million to NATO's initiative to supply Ukraine with US weapons. Thank you so much, Latvia. 84 Ukrainians returned from Russian captivity and latest prisoner swap. Some of them have been held since 2014. Here's the video of these Ukrainian defenders coming home.
Бригада наша. Казаки.
Але чекайте, я Людмила правда.
Так, я вже... Та вот он здесь стоял.
Let me share with you the story of one of these defenders. This is Marnia, and she says, "The man on the phone in the video is my father. Today he has been released from captivity. He spent 2,890 days of his life there. He went through torture and uncertainty. This is the best day ever." This man spent 7 years in a Russian prison camp, and he's finally been released. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.